Huge, massive breaking news coming into us here at Sky Sports News. Arsene Wenger, the Arsenal manager, is to step down at the end of the season. He's been in mounting pressure, Wenger. Arsenal facing potentially their lowest place finish under the Frenchman in his 21 years at the club. And after struggling and failing to get through to the Champions League, again, Arsenal fans have been calling for Wenger to be replaced, many of them. Well, Arsene Wenger has issued the following statement this morning. He says, after careful consideration and following discussions with the club, I feel it is the right time for me to step down at the end of the season. I am grateful for having had the privilege to serve the club so many memorable years. I managed the club with full commitment and integrity. He goes on to say, I want to thank the staff, the players, the directors and the fans who make this club so special. I urge our fans to stand behind the team to finish on a high. To all the Arsenal lovers, take care of the values of the club. My love and support forever, Arsene Wenger. So the big breaking news, Arsene Wenger stepping down as Arsenal manager after 21 years, stepping down at the end of the season with fans so split over their long-standing manager. Please get in touch with us. Send us your thoughts here at Sky Sports News. We'll be reflecting on this with Rob Watton coming up next.
Yes, this comes after Arsene Wenger spoke publicly, actually, for the first time about his possible successor at Arsenal. He had hinted at his former captain, Patrick Vieira, possibly had the potential to replace him. No doubt there will be plenty of candidates lining up and being considered for the vacant position now that Arsene Wenger has announced he will leave at the end of this season. 1 year left on his contract, and Wenger has decided that now is the time, after 21 years, that he will indeed step down from his role at Arsenal. And the majority owner, Stan Kroenke, has issued a statement as well, and he said, "This is one of the most difficult days we have ever had in all our years in sport. One of the main reasons we got involved with Arsenal was because of what Arsene has brought to the club on and off the pitch." Kroenke continues, his longevity and consistency over such a sustained period at the highest level of the game will never be matched. Well, Arsene has unparalleled class, and we will always be grateful to him. Everyone who loves Arsenal and everyone who loves football owes him a debt of gratitude. 3 Premier League titles, including an entire season unbeaten, 7 FA Cup triumphs and 20 successive years in the Champions League is an exceptional record. He goes on to say he has also transformed the identity of our club and of English football with his vision for how the game can be played. We have high ambitions to build on Arsene's remarkable tenure and to honour his vision by ensuring that Arsenal competes for and wins the biggest and most important prizes in the game. Stan Kroenke saying we must now focus on making a strong finish to the season and ask our millions of fans around the world to join us in paying appropriate tribute to one of the greats of Arsenal's history and one of the greats of the game. So looking ahead to the future there.
It will bring to an end 22 years at the club for Arsene Wenger, 10 major trophies and qualification for the Champions League almost every single season. However, this season, that is clearly in doubt. Arsenal will finish outside the top 4. The only route in for them is to win the Europa League. So a huge number of fans have been split. They believe the Frenchman's time is up. There has been much speculation about this following a tweet from a journalist who must have had some inside knowledge and said he thought Wenger would be going. An announcement by the club was due at 10 o'clock. That's coming up in a few minutes, and it has been confirmed that Arsene Wenger will leave the club. The failure to mount a challenge in the Premier League this season, they currently struggling at the moment to finish 6th, just 2 points ahead of Burnley, and a failure to mount a challenge in the FA Cup has led many fans to demand his departure, despite, as Orla mentioned, the 68-year-old still having a year to go on his contract, that 2-year extension, controversially, that he signed last summer. But 10 major trophies from Arsene Wenger, 22 years at the club. We'll be hearing from Arsenal great Charlie Nicholas next. Rob Watton will be reacting to this huge news from Arsene Wenger. Danny Higginbottom as well. But the big breaking news here on Sky Sports News this morning, Arsene Wenger to leave Arsenal at the end of the season.
Hello, yeah, let's turn that up a bit. There we go. Ah, marvellous. And you. Breaking news in the past couple of moments, Arsene Wenger will step down as Arsenal manager at the end of the season. We're getting that breaking news in the past couple of moments, and Arsene Wenger has released a statement. Let's bring you what it has to say. This breaking news coming your way this Friday morning. This is what his statement says. After careful consideration and following discussions with the club, I feel it is the right time for me to step down at the end of the season. I'm grateful for having had the privilege to serve the club for so many memorable years. I managed the club with full commitment and integrity. I want to thank the staff, the players, the directors and the fans who make this club so special. I urge our fans to stand behind the team to finish on a high. To all the Arsenal lovers, take care of the values of the club. My love and support forever, Arsene Wenger. So he will step down for the first time since taking over. It will be a new season coming up without Arsene Wenger. He took over in October 1996. This coming autumn would have been 22 years, but it is not to be. Stan Kroenke, the majority owner of the club, has also released a statement. This is what he's had to say. This is one of the most difficult days we have ever had in all our years in sport. One of the main reasons we got involved with Arsenal was because of what Arsene has brought to the club on and off the pitch. His longevity and consistency over such a sustained period at the highest level of the game will never be matched. Arsene has unparalleled class and will always be grateful to him. Everyone who loves Arsenal and everyone who loves football owes him a debt of gratitude. 3 Premier League titles, including an entire season unbeaten, 7 FA Cups, 20 successive years in the Champions League is an exceptional record. He has also transformed the identity of our club and of English football with his vision for how the game can be played. We have our high ambitions to build on Arsene's remarkable tenure and to honour his vision by ensuring that Arsenal competes for and wins the biggest and most important prizes in the game. We must now focus on making a strong finish to the season and ask our millions of fans around the world to join us in paying appropriate tribute to one of the greats of Arsenal's history and one of the greats of the game. Let's get reaction immediately. Charlie Nicholas joins us now. One of the greats of the game, would you say, Charlie?
Oh, hi, Rob. Undoubtedly, certainly the greatest achiever ever for Arsenal, and include players in there. Man was an absolute genius. I mean, obviously, last few years, it's the team as a whole has generally went back the way, but for the amount of time and consistency that this guy has brought, and the style that he's brought, and the class that he's brought to the club, is absolutely unbelievable. It's a sad day, but in a strange way, I'm happy because I think Arsene was taking too much strain. It was getting to him. And when I look at the stadium, yes, players in the club are equal measures, have done well to build it and the progress of the club, certainly since I played in the 80s. But that man there, he is the main achiever of it all. And because of that, when he sees now that the stands are not quite full, in fact, even half full, I think the pain was starting to seep through into him. He started to realise that he had a lot of quality players, but he couldn't knit them together properly, and the defensive frailties But the money that he started to spend in the end was starting to really frustrate and agitate him. But he's been an absolute genius. He's been an absolute treat for the football club. I don't know where we go to replace him. That's the hardest part. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Now, all I would say, all Arsenal fans, get behind this man and show true respect and appreciation for what's achieved at this football club. He's been absolutely outstanding.
But here we are, Charlie. It's Friday morning. It's the 20th of April. There's still 5 Premier League games for Arsenal to play this season. At least 2 Europa League matches, maybe 3 to go for him. Why make this announcement at 10 a.m. on a Friday morning?
Well, I've been waiting on it for probably several months, Rob. The last time I was speaking to you, I was saying the same thing. But it's hard to do these things, and it's especially hard for Arsene Wenger. When you look back at somebody like Fergie announced it and then changed his mind and then went back and did it again. I think Arsene realised, I think the one thing that's dropped for him is that he's realised is, if the crowd are staying away, he asks himself several questions. This man has always put the club before his personal ideas and his own personal criticism that comes in great amounts. Has been coming in the last 2 or 3 years, and I think this is the one thing when Arsenal fans are staying away. It's not the debates and the frustration outside and all the people who put silly banners up. It's the fact that they stay away not to watch his team, and that's how personal it became. And I think that's why he's announced it. I think he's also saying now, why, if this fizzles out, if we can beat Atletico Madrid over 2 legs and get to the final and win the Europa League, back into the Champions League format, then he leaves in a special high. That would be a beautiful script. That would be the ultimate script for me and for Arsene. But I think he had to announce it so that Arsenal fans, if they don't win the Europa League, that they have to accept that we should still show our true appreciation of this man. And then the excitement will begin next week and who the new manager will be.
Yeah, do you think it's a case of careful of what you wish for the Arsenal fans?
Not really. I don't think there's always been a section or a fair percentage. I think it's probably 50-50 now that some wanted them to go and some wanted them to stay. We want them to stay because of the style and the class that he's brought to the club. But then there's the other thing. It was about 2 years ago that I thought that it would come to an end, and it should have come to an end because the team was going back the way. But I think now what you're looking at, it depends. This is where we've got to have leadership above Arsene. We've got to have leadership of some kind that says, what is the format to carry on? You know how difficult it was when Alex Ferguson left at Manchester United? That could happen here. But Arsenal are in a bit of a fall. So it might be a good thing for the next manager. I ideally, Rob, on a personal level, would like a similar style to continue. Obviously, someone to come in and sort the defensive structure and keep an idea and one eye on and bringing good young players through. You know, there's lots of managers out there that will take people seized by, this prospect of this job. It's a massive job, but it's one that I think there's plenty of coaches out there who are going to be inheriting one special football club.
They certainly are, because he's in his time there, he's effectively built the stadium, hasn't he? And he's kept the club ticking along. He would argue that the financial restraints which came with that move were the reason why he couldn't go out and reinvest as much as he would want. You outlined the characteristics of who you would like to be in charge. Can you put a name to those characteristics?
Well, there's been a few in the past that I always liked, and some of them have actually been a little bit of a downturn in their career. And one was Ronald Koeman until he went to Everton. It didn't quite work well. The last season he was at Everton. I know he's in the Dutch national job. Sorry, Celtic fans, I have to say this, but the style of Brendan Rodgers in Scotland has been breathtakingly good. He probably should have won the league with Liverpool, so he has the credentials for me. I mean, I'm looking yesterday at Arsene's comments about Patrick Vieira has to be in the frame because he's done a nice bit of educational work now in America. So these guys have to come out of contention. I mean, all the other big guys are in jobs. People have been saying to me about Simeone, Atletico, who we face next Thursday. I'm not a fan of that. It's not a style I like. If that's what people want and the club decide, I could understand it, but it's not a style I want. So, the Koeman style, Laudrup when he was at Swansea. I know he's kind of went off the radar. Brendan Rodgers at Celtic. I like all that style of football, which is a follow-on to Arsene. And I think that can be achieved with some of the names I'm putting forward.
Yeah, it is. It does tend to be, though, that the next manager that comes in struggles a little. We saw what happened when Sir Alex Ferguson left Manchester United. Do you fear for that at Arsenal, or do you think everything is in place? Because Arsene Wenger has had total control of that club, hasn't he?
Yes, he has, and he wanted it that way. Look, the club was perfect for Arsene when David Dean was there. When David left, there was a massive hole from the fill. Everybody thought it was a simple, he's just a friend of mine and he does some deals. It wasn't. It was a spirited partnership that understood and focused on how the strategy of the club had to go forward and the building of the new stadium, and obviously David stepped down from that point of view. But it's never really been achieved again, and that's why there's been an issue there. Now, the modern manager won't get as much to say as what Arsene has in the past, because the game's moved on. But that is part of the partnership that you have to achieve from boardroom level to manager or coach level and player level now. So the game has moved on. I would love it if he was still to stay involved and have an idea and a thought process to it. I'm sure he will have an input. But I think he obviously has always said that he will with the football club, and I think that will happen. You know, Arsenal had the problem before that. George Graham won things. It wasn't to the style or the standard that Arsene has brought it. And Bruce Rioch came in for a short time, and it was a disaster. But we managed to get people like Bergkamp in the team and these things. So Arsenal's at a low. We're sixth in the table. Burnley nearly overtook us last night. The reality is, you know, we've one trophy to go for. So it's not as damaging, I think, as what maybe Manchester United would have been seen as, because they were still champions. Whereas Arsenal can move into a situation where there's not any work to be done at the stadium or the club. It's just identifying problems, and the problems are being defensive more than anything else. And for that reason, I do think that someone could walk into this job and very quickly make it work.
Yeah, we talked about him having total control at the club. Was this, do you feel, his decision? Do you think he was forced to make this decision? And what next for Arsene Wenger? I've been reading the statement very carefully. It says he's stepping down from his position. Does that mean he could still yet stay at the club, director of football, or did you see a clean break here?
I see a clean break, because Arsene's always said that once he leaves the football club, that's him gone. Now, I'd like to be wrong in that. I'd like the board to be forcing Arsene to say, look, can you stay on in some capacity? It depends what Arsene wants from life. I mean, has he still got ambitions to be a manager? Probably, because his life has been everything about football. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes up at PSG. I wouldn't also be surprised if there was an opportunity to arrive at Barcelona, because they like short-term ideas and they like style. So, you know, I know La Liga is just about wrapped up for Barca, but I could see his style being appreciated there. He's knocked it back before. He's knocked many jobs back. And the other thing is that with Arsene, you also must see that the contract that players are running down and running out of has been a damaging blow to the club also. So I hope I'm wrong in this, but I do think it will be a clean break. I would not be surprised if Arsene is a manager of a top club next season.
We shall see. Charlie Nicholas, thank you very much indeed. There we go. Charlie Nicholas' thoughts there. Right now, let's take your thoughts back to the 12th of October, 1996, Ewood Park. Was the venue. It was Blackburn against Arsenal. It was officially Arsene Wenger's first game in charge. He had travelled with the squad out to Cologne, in fact, where they played Borussia Mönchengladbach before that. There'd been a 2-0 win against Sunderland after that. But that game against Ewood Park was to be the start of his career. And playing in that team that day, one Nigel Winterburn was in that Arsenal side, and he joins us on the line now. What was the feeling around the camp at the time then, Nigel?
I think, first of all, Rob, you have to realise that when Arsene Wenger came into the football club, as well as the players, staff as well, but supporters knew very, very little about Arsene Wenger. But I think when you start to train with a manager and you look at the way that he wants to set his team out, the encouragement that he gives you, the freedom to go and play, I think it was quite clear from my point of view that, I absolutely fell in love with playing for Arsenal again, if you like, really, because of that freedom he gave you. So from my point of view, there was never going to be any doubt in my mind that Arsene Wenger would be a success for Arsenal Football Club.
So he proved to be a success. League titles would follow. FA Cups would also continue. What do you make of this news today then, Nigel?
It doesn't surprise me, if I'm quite honest. You know, Rob, that I've done a lot of work around the club in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, and it does seem a different feel this season. You're looking at the stadium of late in the last 4 or 5 league games, and the crowds are well down. I think it's run its natural course. Arsene Wenger has been absolutely amazing for Arsenal Football Club. You know, we've had the building of the new training ground, the new stadium. He's kept the club relatively successful. I think the one thing that supporters wanted him to do was get this challenge for the Premier League title, which hasn't happened. I think that's been a big frustration for him and also the supporters. Obviously, we've still had success in the cup competitions, but it probably feels to me that it is the right time. And when Arsene Wenger does step down, I think he will be remembered very, very fondly at this football club, because I think George Graham, if you talk about modern eras, George Graham started it, and Arsene Wenger's taken it to the next level. And I know there's a little bit of animosity around. I agree with Charlie, it's about 50-50. Some people wanted him to stay, others felt it was time to go. But when he leaves the football club, I think people will look back and really appreciate what Arsene Wenger has done.
What about the timing, Nigel?
Well, you could leave it till the end of the season, and people then will start speculating, will Arsene Wenger get offered a new contract? Does he have that other year in advance if we win the Europa League? If he gets knocked out, is Arsene Wenger going to step down? So I think it's right. I think everybody now is a clear picture from now to the end of the season. They need to try and win that Europa League to get back into the Champions League. They can focus on the last few league games. And then once they get the new manager in place, he can assess his squad. He can have a look at his style of play. He can organise what he wants. And then, if you like, right from the start of the season, we've got a fresh start with Arsenal Football Club. And we see who the new manager is and the style of play, which I think for a lot of people will be very, very exciting.
Patrick Vieira was with you in that team away at Ewood Park that day. Would you like him to be the one who is taking that pre-season training and taking Arsenal forward as their new manager?
Well, I'd like anybody, Rob, that could say to me, we're going to move Arsenal back up in terms of where Arsene Wenger had us. But the one thing that we would like to see is that challenge for the title and maybe keeping us successful in the cup competitions. Listen, I still think it's going to be very, very difficult. I don't just think it'll be a given that the new manager will come in and will be successful. We've got to be patient. We'll have to look at the style of play, look at the changes that he's making to the team, because that will happen as well. But if it is Patrick Vieira, then I would be delighted with that. He is obviously in America at the moment. He's learning the management side of the game. He's somebody that has been a winner with Arsenal Football Club, which I think is so important. And I think it's important to have ex-players around the coaching staff at the football club, even if they're, coaching lower down at youth level all the way through. So let's just wait and see. I think he will be one of maybe 10 or 12 names that will be thrown around in the next couple of months before we find out who that manager is.
OK, Nigel, lovely to speak to you as always. OK, let's go from a man who played for Arsene Wenger to a man who locked horns with Arsene Wenger's teams many times during his career. Gary Neville waiting to speak to us right now. Gary, thanks very much for joining us. What your initial reaction to this news?
My initial reaction is one of warmth, really, in terms of thinking about, obviously, when someone decides to make a decision like this, you think back to sort of the great battles, the great games, the great teams and players that he managed over a long period of time. Certainly the best English teams that I ever played against were built and managed by Arsene Wenger. The 98 team was the best team that I ever played against. He got under our skin for a number of years. Was our greatest competitor in terms of obviously going for Premier League titles, the football that Arsenal played. The biggest compliment I can give Arsene Wenger is that he played a level of football and a quality of football that made us change the way we played, and we didn't change for too many. You may change for a Barcelona, you may change for a Real Madrid, but you won't change for too many teams in English football. And his was certainly a team that we would adapt for. We'd have to go more defensive. We'd have to change our style. And that is the biggest compliment that I can pay him, really, in terms of, obviously, his 20-year period. It's just really wonderful football teams that play, great style.
So what happened?
What happened? He did very well. He come to England, and I suppose the question that you asked me there is related to a negative sense. I can't talk negatively today about Arsene Wenger. What he's achieved in this game and what he's achieved at Arsenal Football Club is absolutely immense. There shouldn't be a negative word comes out of anybody's mouth. In terms of what happened, he continued to win trophies right to the very end. FA Cups, multiple FA Cups in the last few years that are now being scorned upon as being not good enough. The reality of it is, if you look back through Arsenal's history, Arsenal have always gone long periods without winning league titles. This is the most successful period in Arsenal's history, this last 20 years. They've got the most incredible stadium, the best stadium in this country, and he has achieved great success through the building of a stadium, through not the largest in investments like Manchester United, City and Chelsea, and that's what's happened. There is no negative sentiment at all. That there hasn't been. There's been far too many people over the last few years for me going too far on Arsene Wenger in respect of sort of disrespecting him. Yeah, I accept that people may think the change was required, and I don't disagree towards the end, because it hasn't been nice going to the stadium, the Emirates Stadium, over the last 12 to 18 months, seeing fan protests, seeing the banners. However, now is a time in this next 3 or 4 weeks for home and away, everybody to celebrate Arsene Wenger in the grounds that he goes to, show the respect that he deserves and what he's done for not just Arsenal but for English football.
Do I take it then that while you maybe understand the fans who've left their seats empty and the fans who have voiced their discontent, that perhaps they weren't appreciative enough of Arsene Wenger then?
It's not a case of lack of appreciation. The fan has every right to do what he wants to do. What I would say is that, my view is now, particularly through social media, it's far too easy, I think, for us to become very critical and overcritical of what's been achieved. I mean, from a point of view of fans, the cost of seats at Arsenal is huge. Obviously, the right of the fans to turn up or not to turn up. The football had become a far lesser standard over this last 18 months than Arsene Wenger had previously set himself. But the reality of it is now, I think that there won't be an Arsenal fan that will look back in 20 years' time and not think of it as a magical period for Arsenal and for the football club, because, like you say, what he has achieved at the club is something that, deserves the incredible recognition.
They sound like huge football boots to step into then for whoever takes over. How tough a challenge will this be then?
Well, it'll be a huge challenge, because the reality of it is Arsene Wenger will have created a culture at the football club that will be set, and there will now need to be an introduction of a new manager who will have to put his own stamp on it. He'll have to manipulate that squad into something that he likes. He'll have to change the environment and make sure that it becomes his team, and the potential there will be some teething problems. But again, I don't think today is about looking forward to who the next manager is, what's going to happen next season. I think Arsenal have done it at this time to allow themselves to move forward and enable themselves to put a plan in place. But today feels like a day to me where we should be talking about Arsene Wenger and his success and the respect that he deserves for his a great tenure at Arsenal, rather than thinking about who the next manager is going to be. I think that's probably for tomorrow and the day after.
I hear you, Gary. Thank you very much for joining us. And then he was gone. A bit like Arsene Wenger, who is to leave Arsenal at the end of the season. We'll have more reaction to that huge breaking news. That's on the way next. The huge breaking news this morning: Arsene Wenger is to leave Arsenal at the end of the season after 22 years almost in charge of the club. Let's just remind you on what Arsene Wenger had to say on his future just yesterday.
My personal situation is not so much my worry at the moment, as you just said. My worry is to transform a season with many disappointments away from home into success, and that's what matters to me. My future is in front of me every time I make a half turn, so that's not my biggest priority.
Do you still feel, though, that it will be your decision?
That doesn't really matter, you know, as I told you, but my worry is Arsenal Football Club. And I think if you have to give me some credit, if you look back in my career, you would have to accept that my priority was always the interest of Arsenal Football Club. I'm not responsible. I am responsible for the results. When the results are not as good as everybody wants it, people ask that question, but I cannot master that. I can only master my commitment, the quality of my work, and I do that.
Hindsight, Danny. Welcome.
Thank you.
By the way, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Listening to that once again,
yeah.
You can pick out little bits in there, can't you?
Yeah.
But it's only with hindsight. So your feeling, obviously, is that he knew yesterday when he gave that news conference?
I think so. And like, you know, the gentleman you just been speaking to, you know, lads like Gary Neville and so on, they're saying the right things, in my opinion, is that now is the time to celebrate him. He's had a lot of negative talk about him these last few years, because obviously Arsenal have gone backward and you're always going to be judged on that, but as in terms of what he's done for Arsenal as a football club, what he's done for football in this country, the way he changed everything, you know, he revolutionised a lot of things, he was ahead of his time, and when supporters of Arsenal and other teams within the Premier League, within Europe, look back at Arsene Wenger's time at Arsenal, it will be with, I think, great pride. Obviously, not ended the way that he wanted it to end, but he's been there a long time and he's done so much from that football club, from changing stadiums, the money that he hasn't spent, the players that he's developed, and the world-class players that he's had at the football club as well. So he should leave with nothing but pride and with goodwill from everybody, because he's been an absolutely unbelievable football manager at that great club.
Yeah, it's easy to forget what the landscape was when he took over. There had been the George Graham years, hadn't they, which ended, as everyone knows, how they ended. And then there was that sort of turbulent period. Bruce Rioch was there for a little while. Stuart Hewson had a couple of sort of little caretaker spells. Pat Rice. The club was in flux, wasn't it? And not only did he bring those things in, you were talking about a sort of European with the Japanese influence as well, that he had new diets, new regimes, which was unheard of in English football at the time.
They were, and, you know, let's not forget he came from Grand Passate as well. Now, imagine a manager coming from that type of footballing background. OK, I know he'd managed in France previously, but imagine a manager coming from one of them areas where he'd been managing to come to manage a huge football club in England. People wouldn't probably take it serious now. But in fact, I don't think it would happen. So I think you've got to give great credit to the powers that be that brought him into the football club. And like I say, his visions, the way he saw things, he was ahead of his time. You know, I think the one thing is, and we were speaking about it off air, is that it's the last of the old great managers in the Premier League. You know, you look at the battles that he and Sir Alex Ferguson had in particular. They run the football clubs from top to bottom. I can only speak from my experiences at Manchester United under Sir Alex Ferguson. And, you know, the reason Sir Alex Ferguson was obviously so difficult to replace and so tough to replace. Yes, he'd had success, but it wasn't just the manager he had to replace. Everybody within that football club, or a large percentage of them, had been brought in by the manager on the footballing side of things, so they all sang off the same hymn sheet. It's going to be very different now at Arsenal. It's going to be a new voice, so there'll be a lot of changes, and like I say, it's going to be big shoes, well, big boots to fill, 100% definitely. And like I say, I think the timing, the way they've gone about it, everyone's saying, well, you know, it's strange doing it now. You've got the Europa League, the league games coming up. I think if he's choosing to leave, I think now is the perfect time to do it. It's the perfect time to say it. They've got West Ham at home, I think, in the next game. Then they've got the Europa League. That's their only chance of getting back into Champions League last season. We know there's been unrest at the stadium over recent months. For one reason or another, the fans not happy. So by Arsene Wenger now, I think, coming out and, you know, putting this statement out that he's going to leave at the end of the season, all of a sudden the atmosphere against Atletico Madrid in particular in the Europa League changes. Everything completely changes. Now becomes a celebration of Arsene Wenger. It now becomes a celebration of, can we win one last trophy for him? Everybody gets behind the team. and therefore everybody can be a winner in them circumstances. So that's why I believe that the announcement's been made now, rather than at the end of the season. Let them celebrate Arsene Wenger now, but I just think with Atletico Madrid coming up as well, it enables the fans to get behind, get away from the negativity. You're arguably going to lose one of your best managers that the club's ever had in the history of the football club. So therefore, celebrate him, and they'll be hoping that that can help with the atmosphere come Thursday in the Europa League.
It's one of the greatest achievements of the club. Obviously, people talk about his trophies, which he won a lot, but was it the way he made good players great and great players even better?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the back four that he inherited there. I'm thinking about Tony Adams' left-footed goal against Everton on the final day of the season in '98 when they were on their way to the double, how that epitomises Thierry Henry, what he did with him, Patrick Vieira, who was new to the club at the time.
I think one of the biggest things would be, you can speak about the experienced players that he made better, but in my mind, a lot of it was the potential that he brought in and how he evolved them, how he made them better players. It was absolutely incredible. You look at the prices that some of them players, what they paid for them, for young players. So for him to be able to develop the younger players to come through and go and have the careers that they have done has been remarkable. It's been incredible. And obviously, the spending power hasn't been there that, the likes of Manchester United, Manchester City, Chelsea in particular have had in recent seasons. So he's done well to maintain that. But I just think slowly but surely over the last few seasons, he's just started to drop backwards. And I think, Arsene Wenger, in my opinion, he can't do anything more than what he's done at that football club. What he's done is in terms of the moving of the stage. I'm talking about off the pitch as well. The way he's changed everything. Off the pitch, the way he brought players in, the way he revolutionised, not just Arsenal, but I think the Premier League as a whole. I think he made managers sit up and pay attention to how it should be done to bring things up to date. And he's quite incredible. And I think that when he's had all this stick over the last couple of years, I think he's carried himself really well as well. I think the way that he's gone about that has been fantastic, because it could have been easy for him to get frustrated. It's been going on for years now. It could have been so easy for him to get frustrated, to get annoyed, to question other people in the press conference, but he hasn't done that because he's won so much at Arsenal. And like I say, he's kept his conduct fantastically well as well.